On a freezing winter day in the city, a young black shoeshine boy wandered the streets, trying to survive on the corner. When he found a wallet left behind at a cafe, he chose to return it to its owner, a wealthy man. Despite being accused and humiliated, he held on to his kindness. But that very act would change his life forever when the man came back and made a life-altering decision. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts. It was a bitter winter morning in the heart of the city, where the sun struggled to break through the gray clouds and the cold wind bit through the coats of early risers. A small, old-fashioned coffee shop sat quietly on the corner of 9th and Main, its windows slightly fogged, the wooden sign above the door creaking gently in the wind. Businessmen in long coats sipped espresso, typing furiously on laptops. A woman in designer heels scrolled through her phone, glancing up only to wrinkle her nose as someone passed too close. The street, though busy, held a particular stillness, a quiet detachment, like no one really saw each other. From across the block came a boy, no older than 12, with skin dark as roasted chestnuts and eyes too tired for someone so young. His name was Langston. He wore a patchy, oversized jacket zipped halfway up over a torn sweatshirt, and the hem of his pants had long since frayed. A wooden shoeshine box, hand-painted and chipped with age, hung from a strap over his shoulder, bumping against his side as he walked. His shoes didn't match, one too small, the other too big, and both had long outlived their purpose. Langston moved with quiet determination, scanning the street for potential customers. He approached a man in a wool coat with shiny shoes, only to be waved off with a sharp shake of the head. A woman whispered something to her companion as she sidestepped him like he carried disease. A teenager at the bus stop scoffed. "Shoeshine? What is this, the 50S?" Before bursting into laughter. Langston didn't flinch. He'd heard it all before. He reached the coffee shop's patio and gently cleared his throat. At one of the tables sat a white man in his early 60s, dressed in a tailored navy coat, gray trousers, and a felt hat that shaded his eyes. He stirred his coffee with slow, precise motions, his face a mask of routine and control. Langston stepped forward and asked softly, "Sir, would you like a shine?" The man didn't look up. "No," he said curtly. "Is that flat and final?" Langston nodded, whispered a thank you out of habit, and backed away. He didn't leave, though. Instead, he lingered nearby, hovering around the alley's edge, still scanning the sidewalk for someone, anyone, who might give him a chance. His face betrayed no anger, only a kind of weary patience. He knew how the world saw boys like him, black, poor, wandering. Some saw trouble, some saw nothing at all. And yet, despite the stares, despite the cold, despite the silence that seemed to grow louder every time someone avoided eye contact, Langston stayed on his feet. Somewhere in this city, someone had to still believe he was more than just a shadow on the sidewalk. The sky had shifted since morning. The sharp metallic blue of winter noon now cast harsh shadows along the sidewalk. The wind hadn't eased, and the cold felt even more bitter as Langston crouched behind the same coffee shop patio, knees pulled up beneath his chest, arms wrapped tight around his shoeshine box. He had wandered the block twice since that morning, circling familiar corners, hoping someone with dusty shoes and a bit of decency would stop. No one did. He'd made it through the day with only the crust of bread someone had tossed in his direction. His stomach ached now, not the sharp pain of sudden hunger, but that low, dragging ache that made him feel hollow and dizzy, like the world was pulling away from him just a little. Still he watched. The old man from earlier was gone, but the table where he'd sat was still there, his coffee cup now half full and abandoned. Langston's eyes wandered lazily across the tabletop, and then they froze. A dark brown leather wallet sat wedged between the coffee cup and the saucer. It hadn't been there before. His heart jumped. Slowly, carefully, Langston stood, brushing the dust from his knees, eyes scanning the street. No one else had noticed. The wallet just sat there, like it was waiting for him. He approached it the way you approach a sleeping dog. Cautious, uncertain. Reaching out, he picked it up. It was heavier than he expected, worn along the edges, but clearly expensive, not like the imitation leather ones he sometimes saw in donation boxes. This one smelled of real hide and cologne. Langston hesitated for a beat, looking back toward the coffee shop door, then up and down the sidewalk. Nothing, no one. He opened it. Inside were several bills, 20s, 10s, and a few crisp hundreds folded neatly. His breath caught. It was more money than he'd seen in one place in months, maybe ever. He counted silently, lips moving just slightly. $340, 0 cents. And then some cards. Credit cards, business cards, an ID. The name stared up at him. Thomas Whitmore. Langston squinted at the photo. It was the man, the same suit, the same stiff face, just a few years younger. He pulled out one of the cards. Whitmore Investments, an address listed in block letters. Somewhere downtown, not far. Langston looked toward the edge of the sidewalk, where the buses hissed by in clouds of exhaust. He could walk it. He sat back down at the table, wallet in hand, staring. No one would know. He could pocket the cash, toss the wallet in a trash can, disappear down the block and eat like a king for a week, maybe longer, maybe even buy a new pair of shoes, real shoes, warm ones, and a coat that wasn't 2 sizes too big and stolen from a donation bin when no one was looking. He could sleep in a room, just one night, out of the cold. But then he saw the photo tucked behind the credit cards, a woman and a little girl, maybe 5, maybe 6 years old, smiling beside Mr. Whitmore. The girl was on his shoulders, arms wrapped around his forehead. The man didn't look stern there. He looked human. Langston stared at it a long time. There was something in the man's eyes. Softness, or maybe pride, something warm, something he hadn't seen in the version that sat drinking coffee that morning. He thought of his own mother. He hadn't seen her in almost 3 years. Her smile, when it did come, had looked a little like that woman's in the photo. Gentle, kind. He wondered what had happened to her now. He wondered what she'd say if she saw him here, holding someone else's wallet, weighing the weight of hunger against the weight of doing the right thing. Langston stood up slowly. He tucked the wallet into his jacket, zipped it all the way up, and started walking. The streets between the coffee shop and downtown were long and gray, lined with frozen gutters and cars with fogged-up windows. He walked fast, boots scraping against the sidewalk, head down, hand clutched tightly inside his pocket around the wallet. As he passed each block, he repeated the name like a prayer. Whitmore Investments. Whitmore Investments. So he wouldn't forget. He had no phone. No Jeep, just a city map that lived in the back of his brain, stitched together from places he'd slept, begged, or been chased away from. After 20 minutes he found the building. Tall, sleek, blue glass, it rose from the sidewalk like it didn't belong to the same world he did. Langston stopped on the curb, staring up at it. There were revolving glass doors at the entrance, and inside a pristine white marble lobby with a desk that looked like something from a movie. His palms began to sweat. He walked in slowly. The warmth of the lobby hit him like a wave. Clean air, heat, the faint smell of lavender and leather furniture. His boots squeaked on the floor. People in suits passed by, not looking down. The woman at the front desk was blonde, immaculately dressed, tapping away on a keyboard. She didn't notice him at first. Langston stepped forward, cleared his throat. "Excuse me?" he said softly. She looked up, and the second she saw him, her smile dropped. "This area is for tenants only," she said sharply. I'm not here for that, Someone dropped this. I think he works here," Langston replied, pulling the wallet halfway out of his jacket. Her eyes narrowed. She stood slowly, one hand moving toward a small black device behind the desk. "You found it? Or you took it?" she said, voice rising. "No, I swear I found it. He left it at the coffee shop earlier. She didn't wait. "Security," she said into the intercom, pressing the button. "We've got a situation. Vagrant kid at the desk trying to run a scam. Looks like theft." Langston froze. His heart thundered in his chest. "No, I didn't steal anything. I was just trying to give it back," he shouted, louder than he meant to. People were starting to look now. 2 security guards in black uniforms emerged from the elevator bay. One pointed. Hey, hands out of your pockets, kid." Langston took a step back. "It's his," he said, pulling the wallet all the way out and holding it high above his head. "It's his. His name's Whitmore. Thomas Whitmore. He dropped it." The guards moved in. One reached for his arm. "Let's go. You can explain it somewhere else." Langston's throat tightened. He wanted to run. He wanted to disappear. But more than anything, he wanted someone, anyone, to just believe him. His fingers clenched around the wallet, knuckles white. "Please," he whispered, eyes darting toward the elevator. "Just ask him, please." And just then, before the guards could grab him, the elevator dinged. The doors slid open, and the man from the coffee shop, the man in the navy coat, stepped out, looking frantic, glancing left and right as if searching for something he'd lost, or someone. The lobby was far too quiet for mid-afternoon. Normally there'd be the sound of dress shoes on marble, the murmur of elevator chimes, the soft ringing of desk phones, but in this moment only tension hung in the air. Langston stood still, trapped between 2 towering security guards, his wrist gripped tightly, his voice hoarse from trying to explain. The receptionist stood behind the sleek white counter with arms crossed, gaze fixed on him like he was a problem she was forced to clean up. Just then, the elevator dinged behind them. The brushed steel doors slid open, and Thomas Whitmore stepped out, breath uneven, eyes sweeping the room as if on instinct. He scanned the space, past the plants, past the receptionist, until his eyes landed on the boy struggling in the hands of security. "You," he said, voice cracking from urgency. "Wait, what's going on here?" The guards turned slightly, still holding Langston. One of them replied, "We caught this kid trying to walk in with a stolen wallet," reception said. Whitmore was already walking toward them, fast. "Stolen?" His eyes narrowed. "What wallet?" Langston twisted enough to lift the object in question, his small hand still clutching the brown leather tightly. "Yours," he said softly, eyes locking with Whitmore's. "You left it at the coffee shop this morning." Whitmore stopped in his tracks, brow furrowed. He held out his hand. "Let me see it." Langston hesitated for half a second, then extended the wallet forward. One of the guards released his grip just enough for him to reach. Whitmore took it, flipped it open quickly, checking through its contents with familiar precision. Bills, intact, cards, present, and finally behind the last flap, the photo. The one with his late daughter on his shoulders, her arms looped around his neck. The woman beside him smiling into the past. Nothing missing, nothing touched. He looked up at the guards, then to the woman at the desk. He didn't steal anything, he was returning it. "But sir," the receptionist started, "Hemp brought it back. That's all you need to know." His voice was firm now, cold with disappointment. Then to the guards, "Let him go." The second guard stepped back. The first hesitated, then released Langston's arm slowly. The boy rubbed at the sore spot but said nothing. Whitmore studied him for a moment, this small, scrappy kid with his crooked shoes, dusty box, and eyes too old for his face. "Why'd you come all this way?" he asked. Langston didn't answer right away. He looked down at his feet, then back up, gaze flicking briefly to the photo now in Whitmore's hands. "I saw them," he said, voice quiet but steady. "The two people in that picture, they looked real happy. They looked like they were good." Whitmore blinked. For a moment he said nothing, unsure what emotion was trying to rise inside him. But before he could ask more, Langston shifted his box on his shoulder, gave a slight nod, and turned to walk away. "Hey, wait!" Whitmore called, but Langston didn't stop. His pace was slow, like someone used to not being chased. He passed the receptionist without a glance. Her expression had changed, not into regret, but something closer to discomfort, like being reminded she'd misjudged someone and couldn't pretend otherwise. Langston pushed open the glass doors and stepped back out into the cold. The wind hit him, sharp and real, but it didn't sting as much as it had earlier. Behind him, Whitmore stood in the middle of the lobby, wallet in hand, watching as the boy disappeared into the street, wondering how someone with so little still chose to do the right thing, and wondering how many people in that building, himself included, would have done the same. The city street swallowed Langston whole the moment the glass doors clicked shut behind him. He didn't look back. The cold wrapped around his face like it always did, familiar, indifferent, biting, but he welcomed it this time. It felt honest, more honest than the looks he'd gotten in that building, more honest than the smooth voices pretending to care while pressing silent panic buttons. He pulled the collar of his coat up against his chin and walked. He didn't know where he was going. He just wanted to put distance between him and those gleaming marble floors, that woman's tight-lipped scorn, and the brief moment he'd almost believed someone might see him for who he really was. Inside the lobby, Thomas Whitmore stood staring at the revolving door long after the boy had disappeared through it. The wallet still rested in his hand, open now, the photo of his daughter between his fingers. She had her mother's eyes, and every time he saw this picture it hit him the same way, like a wave you don't see until it's crashing over you. He blinked slowly and slipped the photo back into its slot, then tucked the wallet into his coat and turned to the receptionist, who had conveniently found something deeply interesting on her computer screen. "Mr. Reynolds," he said, voice controlled, low. "A child walks into this building and your first instinct is to treat him like a criminal?" She looked up sharply, surprised he hadn't already returned to his office. "Sir, I was protecting the lobby. Protocol says..." "Protocol doesn't say you get to humiliate someone based on how they look," he cut in. "You saw a black boy in ragged clothes holding something expensive and made a decision, without asking a question, without even looking at it." Her mouth tightened. "You don't know how often these types of scams happen. He could have had a partner waiting outside. He could. Whitmore stepped closer. "Absolutely not." "Well, he didn't. He came to return something. That photo, it's the only thing I have left of my daughter, and if he had decided to sell this wallet for cash, God knows he probably needed it, I would have never seen it again. But he didn't. He brought it here, through cold and humiliation and being manhandled by security. He still brought it." She said nothing, eyes lowered. He let the silence sit. Then his tone shifted, softer now, but heavier. "What does it say about us that a kid like that expects to be treated like a thief before anyone even hears him speak?" Neither of them said anything for a long moment. People passed through the lobby, brushing by the tension like it was invisible, as they always did. Whitmore turned and walked toward the elevators, but halfway there he stopped. Something tugged at him, something unfinished. He stood in place, watching the doors stay closed, then pivoted slowly and walked toward the front entrance instead. Outside, the sidewalk was crowded with bodies trying to escape the cold. His eyes scanned the edges of the block. No Langston. He moved along the perimeter, past the coffee shop across the street where a woman wiped down outdoor tables, her breath rising in clouds. Finally, he saw him. 3 storefronts down, crouched near a heating grate, back to the wall, box resting beside his knees, arms wrapped around himself like a shield. Whitmore approached quietly, not wanting to startle him. When he stopped a few feet away, Langston lifted his head slightly, but didn't speak. "Hey," Whitmore said gently. "Mind if I sit?" Langston shrugged without looking up. Whitmore took that as permission. The man sat beside the boy on the cold concrete. He glanced down at the battered Shoeshine box. "You been doing this long?" Langston finally spoke, voice flat. "Long enough." Whitmore nodded. "You know, I used to sell newspapers when I was about your age. Not quite the same, but I know what it's like to be invisible." Langston's brow tightened, skeptical. "You? Invisible?" "Yeah," Whitmore said, a slight chuckle escaping. "Before the suits, before the building. There was a time people crossed the street just to avoid me." Langston looked at him then, really looked. "You don't seem like someone who got avoided." "Not anymore," Whitmore said. "But once upon a time I was just a kid trying to keep warm like you are now." Langston looked away again. "I don't need anything. I didn't come to your building for money." "I know," Whitmore said softly. "That's what made it mean more." They sat for a while in silence, city noise pulsing around them, the distant wail of a siren blending with the hum of traffic. Finally, Whitmore pulled the wallet from his coat, opened it, and held out the photo again. "You said the people in this picture looked good. Why?" Langston stared at it for a long time. The little girl's grin, the woman's gentle hand on the man's arm. Whitmore smiling like someone who'd never had to worry about losing anything. Or maybe that's what made the smile so rare. Langston's voice was quiet when he answered. "They look like they belonged somewhere, like they had each other, that's all." Whitmore said nothing, just nodded slowly, the photo still resting between his fingers. Then Langston stood. "I gotta go," he muttered. Whitmore looked up. "You sure?" Langston nodded. "People don't like me hanging around places like this too long. Someone else'll call security." He said it not with bitterness, but a tired truth, a reality he didn't bother resenting anymore. As he picked up his box and slung it over his shoulder, Whitmore rose to his feet too. "Langston," he said. The boy turned. "Thank you." Langston didn't smile, didn't say anything back. He just gave the smallest of nods, then turned and disappeared into the gray city, his silhouette melting into the crowd as though he had never been there at all. Whitmore stood still, wallet in hand, photo safe. But something else in him shifted, something heavier than leather and photographs. He had watched a boy walk into his life, give back what was never expected to be returned, and ask for nothing. Not a reward, not recognition, not even time. And in return, all they had offered him was suspicion. Until now. The next morning, the wind had softened, but the cold still lingered in the city's bones. Sunlight bled through the clouds in pale streaks, casting a dull silver light across the glass towers and cracked sidewalks. Thomas Whitmore sat alone in his office, high above the street, staring out the window without really seeing anything. On his desk, his phone buzzed with missed calls, a calendar packed with meetings blinked on the monitor. and a fresh report lay unread beside his elbow. But his focus remained elsewhere, on the boy who had walked away from him the day before without asking for anything, not even the decency of being heard. He turned the wallet over in his hand once again. The leather was warm now, worn familiar from the hours he'd spent holding it. He opened it slowly, let his fingers drift to the photo. His daughter with her wild hair and untamed grin. The woman who'd taught him how to love without needing control. It was strange how grief could settle into the corners of your life so quietly you forgot it was there, until something, or someone, shook it loose again. He remembered Langston's voice. They looked like they belonged somewhere. That stuck with him, not because it was poetic, but because it came from a place so raw and honest that it made the air feel heavier. Whitmore had been surrounded by wealth, by legacy, by polished names and manicured influence, but in all of that he hadn't seen a gesture as pure as what that boy had done. He returned something priceless, without promise, without protection, and was rewarded with suspicion. That wasn't just unfair, it was a failure, not just of individuals, but of systems, of himself. He stood suddenly, grabbed his coat and headed for the elevator. It didn't take him long to find the area. It wasn't a neighborhood he was used to navigating, but Langston had dropped enough unintentional clues in his speech and shoes and silences that Whitmore had figured out where to look. The blocks were narrow, brick buildings leaning into each other like old friends trying to stay warm. He asked around, politely, offered no badge of power. Just a name, a face, a quiet, "I'm looking for someone." Most people ignored him. One woman squinted suspiciously, then pointed down the alley toward a closed laundromat with a boiler vent spilling out steam. "You mean the kid with the box?" she said. "He don't cause no trouble." Whitmore followed the hint, and there he was. Langston, crouched on a piece of flattened cardboard, polishing his own shoe as if preparing for a customer that might never come. The boy didn't look up immediately, but something in his posture stiffened as he sensed a presence. When he finally glanced over, his face didn't change. "I gave the wallet back," Langston said flatly. "I know," Whitmore replied. "I didn't come to ask for it again." Langston set down his brush and rose slowly, guarded. "Then what do you want?" Whitmore stepped closer, but not too close. "I wanted to ask you something, not as a businessman, as a person." Langston folded his arms. "You gonna ask if I want money? 'Cause I don't. I'm not one of those kids, no," Whitmore said. "I know you're not." There was a pause. Then, "I want to offer you something else." Langston didn't answer, but he didn't walk away either. Whitmore continued. "I live alone now, no family left, just rooms that stay too quiet and dinners I don't finish. But yesterday, you reminded me that trust isn't something that's earned by age or status. It's earned by action, and yours spoke louder than most people I know." Langston's brows furrowed. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying," Whitmore said carefully, "that I'd like to be part of your life, if you'd let me. I don't expect you to trust me right away. I don't even expect you to say yes. But I could help. With school, with a warm place, with time, if you want it." Langston stared at him, not with awe, not with emotion spilling out like some storybook ending. He looked tired, suspicious, like someone who'd heard promises before and seen them crack. But beneath the layers of caution was a flicker of something else, something fragile. "Why me?" he asked, almost in a whisper. "Because you chose what was right when you didn't have to," Whitmore replied. "Because you reminded me of who I used to be before the world made me forget." Langston looked down at his hands. He turned them palm up, stared at the dirt in the creases, the calluses, the worn skin. Then he looked back at the man in front of him, this stranger in a tailored coat, and for the first time in a long time allowed himself to imagine the possibility of somewhere else, somewhere safe. "I don't want pity," Langston said. "You won't get it," Whitmore replied. There was another pause. Then Langston took a step forward. Just one. It wasn't a decision, it wasn't trust, but it was a start. Later that evening, as the city began to fold itself into the quiet of dusk, Langston stood in Whitmore's office, looking out the massive windows. The skyline stretched endlessly, golden with the last light of day. He held a mug of hot cocoa in his hands, steam curling upward like a signal he couldn't read. The coat he wore was new, simple, thick, warm, but it still hadn't sunk in that it belonged to him. Whitmore sat nearby, watching him without pressure, without expectation, just presence. "You know," the man said softly, "it's not about saving someone. It's about showing up when no one else does." Langston didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was no longer a wall. It was a space where trust might take root, if given time. Outside, the wind continued to whisper through the alleys, brushing past empty benches and boarded-up shops. But inside that room, something had shifted. Not loudly, not all at once, but enough. The door had opened, and this time, someone was finally holding it open for him. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.